Designed for running adventures on a variety of surfaces, the Catula Exospikes footwear traction are at home on ice and snow as well as on dry, rocky ground. 12 ultra-durable tungsten carbide spikes provide an impressive amount of grip when you need it and stand up to rocks and other abrasive trail features when you don't. Exospikes will inspire you to follow the trail less traveled, even when it's covered in ice. For more information, visit catula.com.
Hey everybody, this is Jason Bahamundi, founder and co-owner of Run Try Bike. Thank you for joining our 46th edition of Fireside Chats. These are conversations we have with ordinary people like yourselves who are overcoming extraordinary obstacles to achieve their goals and dreams. We have a very special guest today. His name is Stephen Brown. Stephen was diagnosed with an incurable form of blood cancer in 2006 known as chronic lymphocytic leukemia. And if that wasn't enough, in 2019, his wife, Mary Grace, suffered a stroke during brain aneurysm surgery. So we're going to dive into the why for Stephen and why he continues to do these sports after his own diagnosis, but then again, obviously with having to take care of his wife, Mary Grace. Stephen is a 13-time Ironman finisher with some DNFs thrown in there, so we're going to dive into that as well as a 27-time marathon finisher. So we'll pick his brain a little bit about endurance sports in general and what he's doing to continue to move forward in these endurance sports spaces. As I invite our other co-founder, Om Gandhi, onto the show, want to remind you that about a week, March 15th, we'll have our brand new digital magazine for March, April. We have a topic or a theme of overcoming with some great stories in there on how to overcome what seems like the impossible to swim in ice cold water, being written by Adina O'Neill of Team Be Real. We have a story of how Jacob Shelton went from heroin addict to gravel cyclist, and more stories like that in this upcoming issue. We're really excited about that. So make sure you sign up for our newsletter. You can do that through the link on our header in our bio, or go to runtrymag.com, and right there in the header, subscribe to our newsletter, and you'll be able to get that newsletter coming to you on the 15th. And we are joined now by Stephen. Stephen, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. We're super excited to chat with you.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem. We're going to get our other co-owner, on this chat here in a second. But before we start, we're going to make this an opportunity for you to side with either or myself in figuring out whether or not we're going to be friends. Because and I have different opinions on this topic. So when it comes to pizza, do you accept pineapple on pizza?
Do I accept it? Yes. Do I prefer it? No.
Okay, so you're on my team then. So we're going to be friends.
Okay.
I can understand. Actually, I can't understand why other people do it, but if they're going to do it, so be it.
I mean, I enjoy pineapple, but pineapple has its place, and it's not on pizza as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. My guy. I don't know where is. I needed him into this conversation when that was happening. We did get there's half and half. And we've got Run Buck who says pineapple with ham. I don't accept, it doesn't belong on pizza.
Yeah, I don't know. No, I don't think so.
Perfect.
It sounds like you're getting your meals confused, right? It's a whole nother holiday, I think, right?
I love it. Yeah, absolutely not. But thank you for that icebreaker. I'm glad to find out that you and I are going to be friends in this conversation. Host for today.
Yep.
So, Stephen, I gave the audience a little bit of information about who you are with regards to being diagnosed in '06 with an incurable form of blood cancer known as, chronic lymphocytic leukemia. Take us through the diagnosis and what was your mind going through when the doctors came to you and gave you this diagnosis in '06?
You know, my story is it has so many moving parts and it's so convoluted. And people, when they ask me to share my story, I'm like, "Hey, can we narrow that down into a subset, because there's a lot happening." So my diagnosis, first of all, let me rewind and just say that, my whole life I've been an athlete, one of those kids growing up playing every sport I could find, and found my way to multi-sport racing after playing soccer for a number of years, and took to that like a fish to water, and just absolutely loved the lifestyle, and hit the ground running. And I was doing marathons, and I had already had a number of Ironman races under my belt. And then it was late 2005, I started having some difficulty swallowing. It was, solid foods at first, and then it became liquids, and then it became even just saliva. So back and forth with my primary physician trying to nail something down, ultimately referred me to an aneurysm throat doc. Granted, I'm 45 years old at the time. He takes one look in my throat, sees my tonsils are, the size of blimps, and wants to schedule a tonsillectomy for me, which, okay, that's not how I planned on spending my 46th birthday, but we'll make that work. And it was the pre-admission blood work for the tonsillectomy that revealed my white count that was through the roof.
Wow.
And that was the culprit. And the ear, nose, and throat doc said, do you have an oncologist? Because we're going to get them on board before we go any further. And I looked at this guy like, why would I have an oncologist, right? I'm a healthy, active, I have no reason. I've never had a diagnosis of anything. I don't need, but got first available with a great practice here in the suburban Philadelphia area. Saw this doc who ordered a battery of everything: CAT scans, PET scans, bone marrow biopsies, more blood work, x-rays. Dismissed me, brought me back the following week after I had gotten all those tests done, with a confirmed diagnosis of, and we can just shorten it to CLL for the purposes of our conversation, so nobody has to trip over chronic lymphocytic leukemia. With a confirmed diagnosis. And honestly, guys, he's talking and I'm staring out the window, like looking right through him. Like, you're out of your mind, right? You're not looking at the right chart. Something's wrong. I'm an active, healthy guy. I'm training for an Ironman in September. It's got to be an infection, or it's got to be something crazy. But a few more tests, another consult, and it was what it was. So I had a pity party of about a minute and a half. Went home and felt pretty crappy. We had high school daughters at the time, and they had always looked up to me as, I think it was cool for them to know that their dad was that active, you know what I mean, and did the races that they did. And hey, when they're that young and we're taking Ironman vacations in Disney World, that's right. A cool thing, right? So it was just kind of mind blowing for all of this. And because of my elevated white count, and because I was having so much trouble swallowing, they wanted to do they wanted to start treatment right away. So I started chemo immediately, and then followed that up with multiple rounds of additional follow-up chemo over several years. But the next conversation I had was, and many of our viewers here are going to know the name Rob Vigorito, who was with Columbia Triathlon Association back in the day. And they did Eagle Man. They did the old Chesapeake Man before Ironman took it over as Ironman Maryland, Columbia. So that was his race I was preparing for in September. And I said, Vig, what am I doing here? I don't know, do I keep training? Do I roll over? Do I what's my plan of attack? And I knew he could help me because he worked closely with University of Maryland School of Medicine, and I knew that he could help guide me on a couple of levels, as an athlete, as a human, as a physician, on a number of levels. And he just said, you're going to keep going, you're going to keep training, you're going to finish my race, and when you do, you will no longer be called whatever you're called. Your new name will be Remission Man. And that just kind of stuck with me. That's where the name came from.
Love it.
And he every time I use it, he usually gives me a jab and says, I want something for that. That was I coined that for you. I trademarked that. So that's kind of how the whole diagnosis came. That's I guess that's part one or chapter one of the journey.
So you went in for a tonsillectomy,
right?
Get blood work done. 7 to 10 days later, they're
right.
like, you have an incurable form of cancer, CLL.
Right.
You said you had a pity party for a week and a half, or excuse me, a minute and a half, I should say. And like, how is it only a minute and a half? Like, I have to imagine the vast majority of people would have folded up tent and had a pity party of a lot longer than a minute and a half. What makes you only have it for a minute and a half? Is it the two kids and the wife? What is it?
I think that was had a lot to do with it. I needed to let them follow my lead, and I needed to lead by example. And I wanted to do whatever I could to maintain some sense of normalcy in my lifestyle. And that was a debate too, because we're sitting in the doctor's office that second visit, and Mary Grace, my wife, says, we need to tell Dr. Shore about your lifestyle in case he has any limitations. And I said, no, we don't, for that very reason, right? He might give me limitations. So let's just like ixnay this whole conversation in the office. But finally I did. And I said, look, this is what I do. This is what's fun for me. This is what I'm training for. This is what a typical week looks like. And his first response was, maybe we should give that stuff a break for a little while until we get a handle on this. And again, I'm looking out the window and I just want to make a beeline for the door. We negotiated, right? And we landed in a spot that said, I'll be smart, right? I'm going to stay out of germ-infested gyms and petri dish public pools. Right. I'm going to work out a lot at home. I'm going to work out a lot outside. And most importantly, I'm going to listen to my body. So when something doesn't feel right, I'm going to pull the plug and I'm going to go home and I'm going to get the rest that I need. And that created built a whole new relationship for me and my doctor.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, he thought I was completely out of my mind. And, I know we have a lot of pieces to fill in, but fast forward before I forget, he became a runner over the last several years. And he says he blames me for that. He said, I couldn't play tennis. I went out for a run one day, and you know what? It didn't suck, and that's your fault. And I said, okay, I'll take credit or blame or whatever.
Man, you owe a lot of things. You got remission, man. You owe this guy owes you for his health now, running out there, running. A lot of the thing that I was thinking of as you were telling that part of the story was, like, when we go in for physicals, like we doctors and nurses that will look at our blood pressure and be like, what's going on here? Why is it so low? So did your doctors have that and think that low blood pressure might be a result of the CLL and not necessarily the fact that you were in tip-top shape as you were training for an Ironman?
No, because to be honest with you, I'm one of those guys with kind of white coat syndrome to begin with. And anytime somebody in an office straps on a cuff, my blood pressure elevates a little bit to begin with. And maybe it elevates to what is someone else's normal range, but it's still, it wasn't, there weren't any red flags there at all.
Got it.
No.
So in 06, how many Ironman distance events had you finished at that point?
I think I'd finished 7. I was training for my 8th.
And so from 06 to now, 2023, you've added another 7 Ironman to that list, right?
Yeah, and I will say that it really a few years ago was when I officially checked that box, and I said, okay, I think I've done this enough. I can still enjoy the sport. I can still enjoy some shorter distances. I can still enjoy the beauty of running for therapeutic reasons than for anything else. But it took me a while, but I realized I reconciled with myself and just, I maintained what I was doing, but I turned down the volume a lot just so I can just chill and take care of my health.
So your why prior to 06 and your why after 06, I have to imagine were different. How were they different?
My why prior to 06 is just, I was always that kind of a competitive, driven individual. And I was always a little bit left of center, right? So in soccer, I was the crazy goalkeeper, and everybody knew it just when I walked onto the field. And I always looked at the sport of triathlon as there's some crazy guys too, right? That's a little bit left of center sport. And I just, when I did my first event, I was invited to do a race with a friend, and I walked onto, the venue for the very first time, and I got sucked into the world of, latex and cool shoes and helmets, and I'm like, what is this world? I love it, and it was just a natural migration from the soccer field to the sport, right? My why after was, I'm not going to let anybody take this away from me now that I've had it, now that I've established this as my lifestyle, and I want my kids to look at me and say, hey, he's still doing everything that he loves to do. He's going to be okay. And part of that meant even running home from some of my chemo treatments, which, look, understand, it was only, a mile and a half from home. But the psychological benefit I would get from hopping out of the chemo recliner, tightening up my shoes, and telling the nurses what I was doing and looking at the expression on their faces, it was like it was pretty empowering, and I felt as though it was having a physical, it was paying dividends for me physically, mentally, and emotionally. And it was, and again, showing my kids, our crazy dad's running home from chemo. How sick can he be? You know what I mean?
For those of you that are just joining us, my name is Jason Bahamani. I'm the founder and one of the co-owners of Run Try Bike, being joined by our other co-owner, Om Gandhi, as well as Stephen Brown, who is known as Remission Man. We've just gone through Stephen's story leading up to 06 and a little bit after 06 when he was diagnosed with CLL, and his why for continuing to be in these sports. And one of the things that we want to talk about now, Stephen, is the journey that you've had didn't just end with you being diagnosed with CLL, but in 2019, your wife, Mary Grace, went in for brain surgery for an aneurysm, and life changed again.
Yep, that's right.
Can you help the audience understand when I say how life changed again, what that means?
Yeah, and let me just fill in a key missing piece, because, after my treatments in 06, that piece didn't end, because, it's been ongoing treatments throughout the entire 17 years for the most part. I go through spells where I don't need anything, and then I go through spells where I need some treatment. For the last 4 years now, I've been on an oral targeted therapy medication, which has been working wonders for me, and I'm really, really happy with it. So managing my disease is always in the forefront, right? I call myself a survivor, not because I had a tumor, they cut it out, they threw it away, I survived, everything's fine, and now I'm back on the road. I feel like I live in the active state of surviving every day, because it's just the nature of the beast with my disease. So now we can talk about Mary Grace goes in for brain aneurysm surgery in 2019, and she developed a pretty severe reaction to the materials, and it threw her into a really bad ocular event behind her left eye, which ultimately led to a stroke. So they arrested the aneurysm. So the surgery in that light was successful, but it left her with some physical deficits that it took some time to work through. So her life is very, very, very different. She's now, I say permanently disabled, but is anything permanent? She's, for all intents and purposes, she's disabled. But her mobility is limited, but she does have mobility. So, and her attitude is amazing. She's awesome. She's driven. She's the one who's always saying to me, can we go for a walk, or can we go do something? I'm bored. Or thank God that she doesn't have the kind of, approach that says, I'm just going to sit on the couch and feel sorry for myself because, I got dealt a rough hand.
Do you think that mentality that she has is a byproduct of seeing you having gone through your diagnosis and dealing with the treatments for 17 years and still going out and participating in Ironmans for a point there, but still running and participating?
I think that's part of it, but I can't take full credit for that. A lot of that is right, and she watched how hard I trained and how hard I raced, and she watched my wins and my falls, But she was a nurse by profession. So, she understands all the things that patients need to do to get back onto, back into health and to back to doing the things that they need to do. So a lot of it I think it was innate for her, combination of the two.
Yeah. And
So I had a follow-up question on that, Jason. So on the flip side of that, how does Mary Grace's attitude kind of play into your mindset? Like, does it affect your mindset in any way? Because she is got this like optimism and this energy. Does it help you out in any way?
Tremendously. I don't know. I'm so impressed by her positive attitude. And sometimes when you get lost in the day to day, and I help her throughout the course of the day with whatever it might be. And so you get caught in the act of doing because that's what needs to get done. And sometimes you don't even realize what you're doing. And then, there's a lull in the day, it's quiet at night, and you sit back, you look around and you realize, she's got some deficits, and she's, the life that she loved is radically different than it was then. But you know what? A day doesn't go by that she doesn't say, I'm really lucky. And I look at her like, me too then. You know what I mean? Because if you can say that, then I have, by comparison, right, I have no right or reason to say anything less than that. So she really has motivated me as well.
That's such a great lesson in reality, right?
Yeah.
Where life can be hard. I get it, but man, you just have to understand that you can keep going forward.
Life will be hard. That's the difference, right? People go through their life saying, hoping for the best all the time, which is a good attitude to have, right? You always want to be optimistic, but you have to understand that we're imperfect humans living amongst other imperfect humans in an imperfect world, and stuff's going to go wrong. It's not a reflection of anything.
Yep.
A lot of it can't be controlled. What can be controlled is how you handle things, and what can be controlled is how do you navigate and how do you live your life in such a way that you set yourself up to be able to rebound. You set yourself up to have proper perspective. You set yourself up so that you can avoid the things that might put you in a bad way. You know what I mean? So I interrupted you, but this stuff is going to happen, not can happen.
Right. No, I think I'm happy you interrupted me because you're correct, right? I mean, life is hard, right? This concept of utopia is absurd. It doesn't exist because there's always going to be that comes up. That's hard, that we have to deal with. We got a comment here from Jan.
Hi, Jan.
Is that a friend from the area? Jan?
Not from the area, but a friend. Yeah.
Awesome.
A friend in the multi-sport world.
Fantastic. So we had the pleasure of posting your story on our website. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Steven's story and you're trying to catch up, go to runtrimag.com. His story is on there. The picture that we have is of you pushing Mary Grace in a chair. So tell us more about that. Like, I know she wants to go outside and participate, do things like that. Are you guys registering in events to do whatever, 10K type stuff?
Yeah. The next big thing we have is the Broad Street 10 miler here in Philadelphia, which is one of the biggest 10 milers in the country.
Yeah.
That'll be the longest distance we've run with the chair. So that's going to be a challenge. It's a relatively easy course in that it's flat. It actually loses about 200 feet in elevation over the course of the 10 miles. So it'll be a lot of fun. It's a packed race. But we've done lots of local, small 5 and 10Ks. and around we have a house at the Jersey Shore too. So between here, suburban Philadelphia, and down around the beach or the boardwalk or down the shore, and we've been having so much fun with that, and it allows her, I can continue the lifestyle that I love. She can be a part of it in a very different level, but in a level that she's loving and embracing too. So, it keeps us tight, keeps us close.
Perspective is a funny thing. So you're dealing with CLL. She's had her mobility impaired because of the brain surgery, and you just described running a 10-miler as hard, right? Like,
yeah.
So it's going to be hard because of, in comparison to other distances that you've run, right?
It's going to be hard because I'm pushing a full-size human in a chair.
Right.
Yeah.
But all the things that you've gone through in life, like in comparison, getting the news from your doctor had to be harder than that. Getting the news after, Mary Grace's surgery has to be harder than that in a sense. And I put it in air quotes because it's not physically hard, but there's a mental hardship in getting that kind of news.
Yeah, there is. But, it all rewinds to our conversation a little while ago. Stuff happens, man.
Yeah.
You can sit around, you can feel sorry for yourself, and you can limit yourself even more as a result of doing that. Or you can just kind of say, you know what, I have to embrace whatever I have, and make the best of whatever I have, and just figure out a new normal. It doesn't have to be, all that news doesn't have to be a bad thing. The people that I've been able to meet, help, support, work with, organizations I've been able to partner with since my diagnosis, I don't know that I would trade it, to be honest with you, because it's just, I feel like I've mentored a lot of patients who had much more fears than not much more fear than I did, and were maybe in a more dire situation than I was in. Had I not had my own diagnosis, I would never had the opportunity to do that kind of thing. And that's been so rewarding for me that, you talk about reasons for things happening, call it what you may, but I really think that that's one of the reasons that I am where I am, is because I have an opportunity to do some things with my disease that I'm choosing to do.
I love your optimism, Stephen. Like, super positive, optimistic guy as well. I'm always going to see the glass as half full, and where can we go get more water to fill the entire glass? And I love what you're saying, because life changes and you have to adapt with it, or it'll consume you in a negative way. So thank you for those words. They're awesome. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but go ahead.
Well, Stephen, you were talking about opportunities to partner with organizations. And, one of the things I read on your website was you describe yourself as a speaker and a writer. Was that something that came before your diagnosis, or did you, I guess my question is, how did you
that came
eventually
out of my diagnosis?
How did you eventually get to the point where you felt you had the courage to tell your story and help others?
So the writing piece, well, first of all, I've always loved writing. I always did well in writing. Long before my diagnosis, I was an editor and a writer for some local publications and multi-sport stuff. So that's always been in my blood. When I was diagnosed, I was getting a lot of phone calls. I was getting a lot of emails, and I didn't want to be rude, going through treatment, but there was no way I could respond to everybody that was. So I started chronicling my experience, my day in chemo, my doctor's appointments, on my then blog site. And it just became, more involved and more involved and more involved and more involved. And as the time went on, I realized, if I could just figure out a way to bind this together, So, that's what I did, and ended up publishing a couple of different books on the topic or the topics, and I was so vocal and so visible throughout my journey. And, there weren't many people in the triathlon circles who were going through anything similar. So all of a sudden I got a lot of knocks on the door saying, hey, can you come speak at our event? Or can you come talk to our athletes about this, or talk to our kids about that? And sure, if you think it's worthy and it's a story that somebody wants to hear, and that kind of took off as well. And I've been fortunate. I've had oncology or pharmaceutical companies fly Mary Grace and I to Florida for a week to give a talk and have a vacation, and get paid on top of it. So, it's got its benefits, I guess. I don't recommend it for everybody, but it does have its benefits.
No, I just wanted to bring it up because I know there's so many people with stories like that who just kind of struggle to get to the point where they're able to be vulnerable enough to share it.
Yeah.
So I'm just really curious about that.
Yeah, but the tricky thing is that this is what works for me, but it's not what will work for everybody. Some people just need to be private in their journey, and I see it when I get partnered with maybe a newly diagnosed person who thought they wanted some help or guidance, and all of a sudden they get cold feet, and they want to just stay home and lock themselves in a closet and talk to their family, and no one. There's not necessarily a right or wrong way. There are right and wrong things that you can do and not do, but everyone has to deal with it in their own way. This was my way. I was fortunate that it was helpful for me, and it has proven to be helpful for other people as well.
You mentioned, dealing with hardships and things of that nature. And a majority of our viewers, followers of our platform are just getting started in sport. And so you've covered the CLL component and Mary Grace's brain aneurysm and surgery and mobility issues. What I want to talk about, and ask you to talk about today, is the DNFs that you've had at Ironmans and how you've processed those. Because in the grand scheme of things, right, they're a big impact, but overall, like you said, in the green room, you had to go to work on Monday. So
yeah.
I'm asking you to give advice to our endurance sport followers who are literally just getting into the sports, because that's the majority of our followers.
Yeah. I mean, you always want to set your own bar as high as you can, within reason, within your own limitations, right? And you always want to strive for the best possible outcome that you can have. But you also need to have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D when something's going to go wrong. And we've already talked about the fact that it's going to. I unfortunately had a couple of DNFs. I say unfortunately. Today I can say fortunately, because there were some good takeaways there as well. I had a couple of DNFs. I had a DNF in a half Ironman, and two DNFs in Ironman. At the time, you're devastated. Chances are you've even got people there. So now you're getting pulled off the course, and you're going to your family and friends with your tail between your legs, like, sorry, I had a bad day or whatever it might be. But all you can do is just kind of do a little root cause analysis and figure out, all right, now that let me take a minute and get out of my head and say, whatever happened, was any of it in my control? Did I do something? Did I not do something? How can I do something better the next time? So there's typically a takeaway in every situation. And if there's no takeaway, then you don't think about it again at all, because if it was totally out of your control and there's nothing you can do different or better to prevent it, hopefully, from happening again, then what are you worried about, right? It's an act of a higher power, or it's a whatever it might be. If you can't do anything, you let it go. And if you can do something, you figure out what that is, and you take the next necessary steps to prepare better for the next time. Or maybe you didn't have that long ride or a couple of rides that you needed, or that long run, or maybe you foolishly went out and tried some new nutrition at the race expo, and like the cardinal sin that everyone talks about not doing, whatever the reason might be. If there's something that you could have prevented, you look for whatever that is. Yes, it's disappointing, but there's usually growth that comes out of something like that.
Very cool. So for our last question before we get to our rapid fire segment, one of the other things you mentioned in the conversation was various organizations and partnerships that you've been able to work with and talk about. One of the things you mentioned in the green room was, and I think it's a fascinating story about the Peloton comeback program. I'd like for you to speak about that a little bit so that the audience can hear that there are major corporations in the world that actually do it as well.
Doing great things. So like this was shortly after Mary Grace's, when she was discharged from rehab and she was back home in the house. We all know how much spam email we get, right? So I get this email that talks about me being a Peloton comeback winner, right? And I'm real quick to go and delete that, right? But they knew a lot of personal information about us in the body of the email, and I start thinking, this almost sounds legit. So I forwarded it to our daughters. I said, does anybody know anything about this? And our younger daughter said, oh my God, are you serious? So her friend, Peloton has this program called Peloton Comeback, and it's just inspirational stories of people overcoming some kind of a challenge or a life-changing situation, health journey, diagnosis, whatever it might be. She submitted our story to Peloton, about the Ironman marathon runner husband who's now also a full-time caregiver, and Mary Grace's situation. And it was a slam dunk for Peloton. They awarded us a bike, shoes, hand weights, what else? The works, and 3 years worth of free subscription services. So there are good organizations out there doing good things with with the money they're pulling in from people. So it was touching for me, and I'll tell you what, it's made a huge difference because my wife rides all the time, I ride all the time. It's a chance for her to continue her strength, keep getting better and better every day. It's a chance for me to augment anything that I can do and do it right here in the comfort of our own home, and not have to worry about going to a gym or going out on the road, or, God forbid. I'm doing everything differently now than I did 3 years ago. I'm not going to just disappear for a 6-hour bike ride unless I have, things real buttoned up. And even then, I'm probably not going to do it. So the fact that I can do this is huge. And, kudos to our daughter's friend who submitted the story and to Peloton.
That's awesome. So outside of here on Instagram, where else can our readers and followers and listeners find your story and follow you if you're still creating that blog?
Yeah, so remissionman.com is my website, and links to all my other social media platforms are in there. It's kind of one-stop shopping for anything and everything. Admittedly, it isn't always as current because my social media stuff is much more current, and sometimes I forget to go back and refresh the website, but it's still a good portal for contact, for social media, for anything I've written, for a lot of my media stuff, for pretty much anything.
Your story is beyond inspiring, and
thank
for
you,
those
Jason,
joining us, you will, and you've missed the first half of the conversation, you'll be able to see it once we get off this call. It'll be on our Instagram feed immediately, but then also it'll be on our website and our YouTube channel by Thursday the latest, and on our podcast that you can get on Apple, Spotify, and Google by Monday. So absolutely make sure you check out Steven's story. Go to remissionman.com as well, because it's super inspiring.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, like I am so uplifted after this conversation, and just going through my head about things that I thought were going to impact me at a level that would stop me from doing certain things. I'm like, come on, man. Like, listen to this guy's story and think about all the things he'll be able to do now. So, and I hope, and I do believe that the rest of our audience will like that too. So now we're going to jump into some rapid fire questions. We have already discovered that your team no pineapple, which is big for life. Sorry, Om, you're out on that.
Well, no pineapple on pizza.
Correct.
Okay, let's clarify.
As it's flavored. Like, I like pineapple after a hard run or a hard ride. I like the pineapple there, but it's not going to be on pizza ever. You're an East Coast guy, so do I have to ask you about Chicago or Detroit style pizza?
No, you don't, because I have two pizza places here locally in Delaware County that's the only pizza there is in my mind. Everyone else can just close up shop.
Yes. When people come to me and they're like, "Have you tried Chicago style pizza?" I'm like, "Yes, I once had a bowl of tomato soup." Like, not even Chicago style pizza ever. It's never going to happen. But Detroit style, I will give them half a thumbs up. Have you ever heard of Detroit style pizza?
Yeah, a few seconds ago when you just brought it up, but other than that, no.
So like Sicilian slices?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically the same thing, except they melt the cheese on the outside of the crust as well. So it's basically the same thing, but with cheese melted on the outside of the crust. Give a half a thumbs up on that.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Without the pineapple, but yeah.
Pineapple. Just what are you putting on your pizza?
Oftentimes nothing, but occasionally mushrooms. I'm an extra cheese guy, but I'll put mushrooms on there from time to time, and maybe some ground beef. But I don't like a lot of junk on my pizza.
Yeah, that's the way it's gotta be. That's East Coast. Yeah. Like, just let me fold it. Let the grease run down my elbow.
Yeah.
Right? So the majority of our rapid fire questions are about food, since that's what we love the most. Who's this? Is that Melody or Jacob telling me to put onions and beef on pizza?
You don't put onions on anything. You don't. No.
Yeah, for onion.
Onion is one of the cardinal sins of the world.
They're bringing out my New Yorker.
Onions are, yeah.
Sorry, Jacob. We're no longer.
Onion, Jacob.
Barbecue guy? Do you like barbecue?
Do I like to barbecue?
Or eat
like
barbecue?
Grill, or do I like to eat barbecue food?
Eat barbecue.
Yeah. I don't dislike it, but it's not my go-to. It's not what I'll order when I go out.
So if you had to choose, though, or because people are very particular about this, like we're particular about pizza, is it Texas style, St. Louis style, or North Carolina style barbecue?
All three of those things are great to me. I don't know. It's whatever. So I guess my first answer should have been no. I guess I'm not a barbecue guy if I can't answer that question intelligently.
I love it. We're big candy guys here. So is candy corn a real candy, or is it just earwax coated with sugar?
It's delicious. It's real candy.
Oh no. We're in the wrong direction. We're rowing in opposite directions right now.
But only in October and November.
That's perfect. Are you a licorice guy?
Mm-hmm. Red.
Is candy corn is trash? I like that response. So from a licorice, do you like the red or the black, or are you okay with both?
No, just red.
Just red. Mm-hmm. So are you a Red Vines guy or a Twizzler guy then?
Twizzlers.
Yes, perfect.
Candy corn needs to be flushed down the toilet.
Jacob's back on Team Bahamundi. Awesome. So when it comes to Peeps, are you?
Yeah. This is a good nutrition conversation we're having here, Jason.
Yeah, this is not about how to recover. This is about making sure that we're still enjoying ourselves after 50 or 100-mile bike ride and stuff. Like, we got to enjoy this food too.
Around the Easter season, I will eat a Peep, and then I will say to myself, what the hell did I just eat that Peep for? But I'll do it.
Cadbury eggs, yay or nay?
Yeah.
No, not bad. I can never get past the look of them.
Yeah, true.
Like
true.
Of the idea of that sugar mixture, I can never get past the look.
There's nothing better than just classic chocolate and peanut butter in my mind. So
yeah. Reese's cups and everything, you're good.
Yeah, I'll put peanut butter on anything. If I can put chocolate and peanut butter together in anything, I will do it. My kids have found me chocolate peanut butter stouts, like good solid porters and stouts that are chocolate peanut butter flavored, and they look at me like, only you will like this. Here, enjoy.
I love it. So, do you remember circus peanuts?
Yeah.
Are those something you're gonna buy?
No. But as a kid, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I ate them as a kid. But I know it's probably been 40 years since I had one of those things.
Always had those circus peanuts in the house.
Yeah.
It's like, I think Amazon uses them to pack boxes nowadays. Like nothing. It's like,
Yeah, they just spray them white.
Exactly. Is red velvet an actual flavor, or is it just chocolate cake with red dye?
That.
Yes.
It's not a flavor.
Are you a cake guy or a pie guy?
I'm a little bit of both. I can't, you know, sparingly. I don't eat it a lot, but you know, a good piece of warmed apple pie with some ice cream on it.
Yeah.
You know.
So I live in Phoenix, and obviously it gets hot here. And Spring Energy makes an apple gel that is the gel you can run with out here in the summer because it becomes like warm apple pie because it's so hot here.
Right.
And it's like pie, you're like, okay, I can keep running. Whereas the other gels are just, they get so bad because it's so hot. So warm apple pie would be your favorite pie.
Yep.
What's your favorite cake then?
Carrot cake, maybe. I think.
Do you put raisins in your carrot cake or no raisins?
No.
No.
I don't think I ever heard of that either until just now.
TMX, your horizon.
You're broadening my palate here today.
Now, run out and get Detroit style pizza with the carrot cake with raisin dessert.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so less food, a little bit more serious. Last couple of questions. When you're out there running or walking, are you listening to music, podcast, or nothing at all?
Generally nothing at all. And my philosophy has always been you're going to race that way, right? Or you should be racing that way. And I just love the solitary and the therapeutic effect of being out there with just the oneness of you and your feet, you know, and I don't want to listen to anything.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I just raced a 50 miler out in Henderson, Nevada with Ohm and my partner. And it took me 10 and a half hours, no music, no headphones, nothing. Like, let's just run and enjoy the atmosphere and the surroundings and the footfall and stuff like that. So I'm with you.
Yeah.
What book would you recommend for people to read? Favorite book or book recommendation?
I just finished Shoe Dog, which was the Phil Knight Nike memoir. That was really good. That's probably my most recent favorite book.
Movie guy or TV guy?
TV guy.
Favorite.
Movies on TV now in today's world, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I can't tell you the last time I was out in a theater.
Favorite TV show then?
We're in the middle of binging Mad Men right now. I know it's been around for a while, but we never caught up with it the first time around, and that's been pretty good. Schitt's Creek's another favorite one. We've binged that 3 or 4 different times, and we just keep cycling through. When we need something light and funny and ridiculous to laugh at, we'll put Schitt's Creek on.
Awesome. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Anytime you want to come on our fireside chat, please let us know. Your story is super inspiring, and we think and believe that more people need to hear your story so that they can also go out and overcome their obstacles.
That's really kind of you to say. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.